All right, this is an interview at Days Inn, Hicksville, New York, 20th of November 2003, approximately 9:15 a.m. The interviewers are Mike Russert and Wayne Clark. Could you give me your full name, date of birth, and place of birth, please?
My name is William M. Heston, Jr. I was born in Toledo, Ohio in 1922.
Okay. What was your educational background prior to entering service?
I had just completed my undergraduate degree in chemistry at Ohio State University before I got into the service.
Okay. Do you recall where you were and your reaction when you heard about Pearl Harbor?
Yes, I remember very well. I had just come back to my dormitory at Ohio State University from a Christmas concert and heard it then.
Okay. Now, were you drafted or did you enlist?
I was called by my draft board early in 1944, in January or February. At that time, I was in graduate school already. I was at Princeton in graduate school. Just 10 days elapsed between graduating from Ohio State and going to Princeton in graduate school on one of their graduate fellowships. I was called by my draft board in Toledo, Ohio, saying that they could no longer defer me, even though I was in science, and they wanted me to have a science education. And they said, we suggest that you go to the services and see if you can get commissioned, because you have this degree in science. So that's precisely what I did. I went down to 90 Church Street in New York City and applied for a commission in the United States Navy.
Okay. And did you have to go to any training, boot camp, or anything like that? Or
Yes. We went to Fort Schuyler. There were quite a few of us in my situation, and we had a program there, mainly physical training and learning about Navy regs, and getting acclimated to the military life.
Okay. How long did that last?
You know, as I was thinking about answering the question, how long did it last? However, I will say that my first duty station after that was Princeton University, back in Princeton, studying electrical engineering. I was in a group of electrical engineers. I don't think I ever worked as hard in my life as I did then, because I wasn't an electrical engineer. I had to take all the math courses, and such as they were. There were 2 or 3 of them, and of course the engineering courses. That lasted 6 to 9 months, as I recall. A little hazy on it. Then we all were shipped to MIT for advanced stuff and radar, and we spent some time there.
Now, was this practical application or was it theoretical that you took there?
Mainly theoretical. Mainly theoretical, because radar was new then.
Yes,
the British, had developed it, and we had some of those early British radars, and we studied there.
Now, let me ask you this. These courses you took at Princeton and MIT, were you able to apply those towards your doctorate degree?
No,
No?
not at all.
Okay.
It was helpful information to know.
Okay, so
So then I was at MIT. Then carrying on, what happened after MIT? We were, some of us, because I had selected to be the Navy. Up until then, we weren't in any particular branch. Some went to the Marines, some went to the, of course that's the Navy, but some went to the Army, some went to the Air Force. I chose Navy. And so I was sent down to Sea Island, Georgia, CIC school. As it turned out, I can get into that if you'd like.
Oh, sure.
I was to, it turned out I ended up in a very special branch. There were 10 of us selected. It was necessary that I have the CIC training and to see a CIC in operation, etc.
Now, what did that stand for?
Combat Information Center.
Okay.
And ships, big ships, warships, battleships, cruisers and so forth, they all had CICs. And I was there for, now I cannot tell you whether it was 8 or 10 weeks or 12 weeks, something like that. Then back to MIT for some special work and the radar we were going to use. And the radar we were going to use that was developed was a very special type of radar, long distance radar. It was to be put on an airplane. And that airplane would fly above the carrier and send the signals down to the admiral in control. We were really aiming for the invasion of Japan with this equipment. We had TBM-3Ws. We call them Guppies, because the radar was underneath the bottom of the plane that looked like a guppy, the shape of a guppy. And we were training to go over on the invasion of Japan utilizing this equipment. And this equipment would see a long distance. Because you get up at 10,000 feet, your line of sight is pretty good. Of course, radar is line of sight. So we were trained there. We were trained to identify airplanes quickly. Now in this, I should back up a bit and say that in this airplane there was the pilot. And every pilot we had, and we had about 10, were all combat people. Veterans, yes. They had been in combat. And generally they were of the rank of lieutenant commander or commander. And they flew the plane. In addition to a person such as myself, who was an officer, I was lieutenant junior grade at the time, would be accompanied by a technician, a specialist. And the two of us would keep the thing going. I generally was on the scope. I was on the scope and did the communications with the base. It was really quite interesting. The interesting thing about this is that if the channel broke between the airplane and the carrier, for the person who was conducting the invasion, we were to take over until another plane got in station. So that's why all that CIC training and aircraft identification and so forth.
So there were modifications to the plane then to...
Oh yes. Yeah, instead of carrying bombs, carried a radar.
Now where did... Usually we would have the pilot up front and the second person be like a turret gunner, right?
All right. No, this didn't. You were underneath.
You were underneath?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
The radar was underneath, between the wheels. And the back part of the plane, you know, was a tail section really. Was where we sat, side by side, two of us.
Oh.
Big scope in front of us. So in 1945, I don't recall right now the month. We got orders by plane and myself to go pick up a carrier in California, and as I recall, Long Beach area. So since this plane was not a long distance plane, we had to put down quite frequently on the way to California, refuel. We were in Kansas one night. I think it was the second night, as I recall. We got up in the morning and learned about the atomic bomb. That impacted on our orders greatly, of course.
Now, what was your reaction when you heard about the dropping of the atomic bomb?
It was one of glee. As a scientist, I knew a little bit about that business. I didn't know about bombs, but I certainly knew a bit about fission, nuclear fission.
You weren't aware at all of the United States working on anything like this? You had no idea?
You know, no, I did not. However, I will say this, that when I was at Princeton and went for this Navy interview in New York City, a few days later somebody came to interview me. I should have known who he was. It was Vannevar Bush, and they were looking for men for the Manhattan Project, and I was one of them. Pardon me. On day X, I got a call from the Navy. Thank you. Thank you very much. Come to Church Street and sign the papers that I'd be an ensign in the United States Navy. The next day, Vannevar Bush came back, but he couldn't touch me and get me to the Manhattan Project because I'd agreed to go into the Navy. So I missed the Manhattan Project by a little bit, but I got into a situation in the Navy that I just don't think it could have been excelled. It was a very rewarding experience.
Now, you mentioned in this form that you sent us that you also tracked the captured V1s.
Yes. All right. Now, I was sent to, instead of going to the carrier, to which I was going to be assigned, I don't know which one it was, we went to the Mojave Desert in California at a station, naval station there. And after spending 2 or 3 days there, as I recall, again it's a little fuzzy, I was assigned to Reem Field, R-E-A-M, below San Diego. And after some time there, I was assigned to Point Mugu, M-U-G-U, near Oxnard, California, near Port Miami in California. The landing field at that air base was a metal strip. It was quite primitive in terms of buildings and what was there, but the officers' barracks were right on the beach. It was a lovely location, and they had some captured V1s. We wanted to try out this equipment and how it would work on real live bombs. So I spent the rest of my time that I was there, a year and a half, studying these missiles and tracking with this equipment.
How successful was it?
Quite,
Was it?
yeah. We'd fly up, take off from this metal landing strip and go up, and then they'd fire one off and we'd track it. It was quite sophisticated equipment for the time. Now I'm sure it would be like the Model T compared to what they have now. And of course they don't fly in those single engine bombers, dive bombers anymore. They have larger planes with 4 engines and quite some.
So this was really, you were in on being a pioneer in this
Absolutely.
tracking with the radar.
And to the best of my knowledge, of the 10 men, I was the first to go and head for a carrier. I would have been the first lead plane doing this.
Okay. Now, how long were you said you were out in California?
Okay. I got out of the Navy. They sent me to Chicago to get removed from the Navy, delist. I can't think of the word right now. And
Discharged?
discharged. Yeah, discharged. And heck, within 10 days I was back at Princeton in graduate school. So I was gone from April 44 to September of 46. I was in the Navy.
You didn't get called up for Korea?
No. No, I did not. I stayed in the Navy and started doing these tests and so forth and got promoted to lieutenant senior grade. But you know, studying for my doctorate, which was some exam, I just had to give it up. In some ways I regret that I did, but so be it.
Did you use the GI Bill to go back to?
Yes, to graduate school, yes. Yes, I did.
Did you ever use the 5220 Club?
5220.
It was $20 a week for 52 weeks. It was kind of an unemployment insurance.
No.
I know
No.
some students were able to use it.
No. I completed my doctorate in 49. I was very fortunate. And went right to work.
Okay. Did you ever join any veterans organizations at all? Or?
You know, I haven't done that. I haven't done that. I've been so involved with other things that I didn't get involved.
Did you ever stay in contact with anyone that served with you?
Yes. The 2 technicians. I did see one of the 2 a few years ago, maybe 12 years ago, something like that. And that was the extent. I'd sent Christmas cards and so forth. So, but that was the extent. I haven't written them or talked with them for at least 5 years, 8 years anyway.
Do you remember where you were and your reaction when you heard about the death of President Roosevelt? Did you have a...
Yeah, no, I don't recall. I don't recall right now. I'd have to think of when he died. Wasn't it 45?
Yes, April.
I was out in California at Point Mugu.
Okay. How do you think your service time changed or affected your life? Or do you?
It didn't change my life. I had decided well into my undergraduate college education that I wanted to go on to the doctorate in chemistry. And I'd already made the decision where I was going to graduate school, so it didn't affect that at all. It did make me respect the armed services and the difficult problems and decisions that have to be made. And the importance of training. They did a good job, and they had good instructors. At Princeton, we had some very good people. On MIT, people that really knew the radar system and how it worked, what you could expect of it.
Do you think being in this working with this experimental system, the radar and the long-range tracking and so on, and the electrical engineering, do you think that gave you a different outlook or perspective on in any way? Or?
Oh, well, because there's another important branch of knowledge, which I think was confidence building for me. Saying, sure, I could do this stuff. And knowing how electronics worked was very helpful because when we get back to graduate school at Princeton, my professor was a consultant to the Navy. And we were able to get hold of an old radar. And my doctorate thesis is based on using a radar to study liquids. And actually, I mustn't get into it too much, but it deals with dielectrics, distribution of electricity in materials. And we used it. You see, there was a theory in this field of dielectrics that if you got high enough in frequency, you could catch some transitions. And by golly, that radar we got hold of was a 1.27 centimeter radar. Very high frequency. And we were able to do it. We were able to prove a so-called Debye theory. Debye was a very famous chemist at Cornell.
Do you think you would have been able to do this if it wasn't for your background in the Navy, or do you think you would have maybe...
Oh, I never would have had that experience of using the radar to study, to get those high frequencies that were required to do this kind of study. Oh no, this is made possible by the radar. Now, it turned out that one of the other graduate students in my group at Princeton, there were three or four of us, did the same thing I did in the Navy. And so we had that background. It was invaluable, frankly, to the project.
Okay. Do you have anything else you'd like to add? Or?
Well, I appreciate the opportunities and experience the Navy afforded. I'm a great Navy supporter. As a result, of course, I wasn't hurt. I didn't have an unpleasant experience. And I just had admiration for the officers in the Navy, in particular those in charge of a carrier or a battleship or whatever, any kind of ship, frankly. The breadth of their duties towards their men and for their country.
Okay. All right, well, thank you very much for your interview.
Yes.